What if I told you that 94% of employees would stay at a company longer for one reason, and it's not about getting a raise? According to LinkedIn and the 2019 Workplace Learning Report, 94% of employees admit that they would stay at a job longer with their current company if they simply invested in helping them learn. Helen Honisett is a partner at Defy Expectations, where they focus on using business skills to help executives and business leaders solve the complex business issues of the day in today's turbulent workforce. They do this by appealing to the emotional and loving side of leadership, making sure that employees feel valued, loved, and that they have an emotional stake in the success of the company. Defy Expectations was founded by three seasoned business professionals who have experience running large-scale corporations in good times and in bad. They've walked in the shoes of business leaders in every level of an organization, and they want to use their expertise to help you build more resilient people, to increase your productivity and stabilize your morale where everyone wins. And Honisett joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn how you help organizations build resilient people. Great to see you today, and good day to you from across the pond from England. Great to see you today, and thank you so very much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and hello from rainy England.
Absolutely. Now, Helen, I know that we share a mutual synergy and wanting to develop people and workforces that are resilient and productive. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about all the great work that you do.
So at Defy Expectations, we get the right people in the right places doing the right things with the right people consistently. And for us, we know that that all comes from having great leaders at all levels of the organization. It's great if you have an aspiring CEO who everyone wants to follow, but if you don't have great leaders down towards the coalface of an organization, then you're not going to deliver the business results that you want to. So for us, building resilient people starts with building great leaders, because great leaders care and love their people and therefore nurture an environment where resilience can build and foster.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen, tell me the importance of really empowering the people that you work with as a leader, because if they're emotionally and otherwise invested in the success of the organization, everybody wins, don't they?
Everybody does win. Emotional empowerment is also about stepping back and looking about the processes within your organization as well. But I'll come back to that. When I talk about empowering people emotionally, what we're looking to do is create environments where conflict conversations are welcomed and enjoyed by people because they feel safe. and they feel as though they can share their opinion, share their perspectives in a way that's not going to be personally reflected back on them. But that doesn't mean you have conflict all the time. It just means that actually people can speak their mind, share their views, share their opinions. And with that, we can find great solutions to complex problems. The other aspect of empowerment comes by allowing decision-making to happen close to where the problems are. A lot of the time we see in large organizations, you've got to go up the hierarchy to get anything agreed or signed off. That loses time, it loses agility, and it really, really disenfranchises your workforce. So for me, emotional empowerment is allowing people to make the decisions they need to as close to the problem as possible, whilst also building really safe environments where people feel as though they can honestly share themselves and their opinions effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen, I'm going to share just a bit about myself. So I was born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy. It simply means that I don't have enough oxygen in my legs to walk normally. And outside of hosting this podcast, I work with organizations to help amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities. So tell me, how much of a competitive advantage do you think organizations would have if they embrace hiring inclusively and infusing their workforce with individuals with disabilities?
So Einstein is quoted to have said, you cannot solve problems with the same thinking that got you there in the first place. And for me, diversity and inclusion is all about looking at different perspectives, making sure you've got different viewpoints at all levels of the organization as well. So hiring people, for example, from different physical abilities, different neurodiversities, different ethnic backgrounds, different religions, different genders is critically important because we all come with different perspectives. Your view of a problem will be different from mine. And that's awesome because combine that together and we'll get a great solution. The problem with linear thinking, which is what we've got in a lot of organizations today, is you get linear problem solving, and that's not going to get us any progress or advancement. So for me, diversity of problem solving is what we really need to wrap our arms around. And any leader who's seeing the complex situations that we've got coming in 2023 and beyond needs to get on board, because without diversity of thinking and perspective and opinion, we're not going to come up with the solutions that we need to thrive today and in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And in your opinion, I'm also curious to ask you a bit about elevating women in leadership in the workplace. What do you think needs to happen so that more women in the workplace can ascend to positions of leadership?
It's an interesting one. So I'm the daughter of a very successful businesswoman who started her career in the 60s. And she was my role model. So I knew women could get through the glass ceiling, but the way to get through that glass ceiling was to act like a man, but we were allowed to wear pretty dresses. So it was one of those ways where we assimilated ourselves in the workplace. I know for most of my career, I have role modeled myself in very masculine ways. Now, I have neglected the more nurturing, more caring, more feminine traits that I naturally possess as a woman. And I think when we look at female leadership, it's not just about getting women to move up through the organizations. It's allowing women to bring the traits that women more naturally have and allow them to bring their whole selves to work. So I know a lot of wonderful, nurturing, caring men, but actually that is very instinctual in women. So how do we bring that to the fore and allow females to be role models so that even men can look at them and go, that's how I want to lead too. So we're getting more women in leadership, I think starts with giving women the permission to be women, not just men in nice dresses.
Absolutely. Individuality is the strength of leadership, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And Helen, I know that you're the author of Defy Expectations. In addition to running the company, the book that you wrote looks at leading with love and integrity and trust. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about the book, the mission behind it, and the process of writing it as well.
Yeah. So the whole concept of Defy Expectations, the book, started back in 2009 when I was sitting in a leadership training course, and everything I was being told felt completely alien to me. How I was being told to lead, how I was being told to manage wasn't what I was doing. And yet I was one of the only two individuals in that room who had hit their targets for the last 2 years. So this sparked a question in me. Actually, it sparked a question in me at the bar that evening when I was chatting to somebody else, another colleague, and we were just like, yes, but this just doesn't feel right. So I started looking at what I do differently. And I started realizing the more I examined and focused what I did differently, the more successful my teams were becoming. And then back in 2017, I started breaking that down. I thought, right, I'm going to start writing this, actually capturing what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and really making sure I can systemize this so I can scale it. At the time, I wasn't thinking a book. I was thinking, just get it out of my head, because then I'll know I can repeat it with other teams, bigger teams. I can teach my teams how to do this. Because at the time I was leading teams I was leading a team who were leading teams and teams of their own. So I really wanted to make sure we could scale this out. And I realized the three main factors that I was focusing on was making sure my people feel loved. And that's not usually a word that you hear in the workplace, but I mean nurtured, cared for. I gave a damn about them, not what they did, not their outputs or their outcome, but who they were. I also realized that that meant me turning up with full integrity. And when I talk about integrity, I don't just mean honesty, I also mean wholeness, that bringing your whole self to work. And also trust, because trust can be a constant sort of game of chess. Oh, Kevin, I'm not going to trust you fully because I don't think you trust me fully. And you end up with that weird friction. Whereas if you just walk in and go, I trust you completely, Kevin. And I know that makes me vulnerable. I know that opens me up potentially, but I'm going to do it anyway. Other people will step towards you as well. And that allows you to build that cycle of love and integrity and trust, which builds psychological safety for people. So the book was really about that, understanding the methods I was doing, going all the way back to some of the experiences I'd had in childhood, all the way through my teens, all the way through my young, career, into really understanding what made me a great leader and what made me help people give their all. And that process of just writing it down ended up with a conversation with a friend of mine who went, why not turn it into a book? And so I did, 500 words a day. And then in 2019, it was published.
Well, congratulations, and I think consistency of performance is the key to success in any aspect of life, isn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen, I asked you earlier about inclusion in terms of diversity and equity and inclusion for folks with disabilities, but I wanted to more broadly ask you about inclusive leadership and whether you think the components of trust and integrity of what you just finished talked about is how you really define inclusive leadership as a whole. So how do you define inclusive leadership?
So I think inclusive leadership comes down absolutely to those two words, integrity and trust, but integrity in both senses of its meaning. So we talk a lot about integrity and we actually mean authenticity. But the whole integrity of just the completeness, the integral nature of something, being who you are, bringing everything you are. Our past and our past experiences define how we act and how we behave in given situations. We cannot ask people to leave home life at work. We can't ask people to leave their past at work. So integrity, being able to bring you as a whole person, is incredibly important to inclusion. And creating that safe environment to do so requires trust. It requires trust on everybody's behalf. It also requires being human. None of us are perfect in any way, shape, or form. And some of us will have great days, some of us will have bad days. And that is all part of the human experience. And we're all constantly learning. So I think inclusion requires people to know that everybody is on a journey. No matter where we're starting from, everybody is moving forward somehow. It requires us all to be open and trusting of one another, that we're here for the best of everybody. And it requires us to bring integrity and our wholeness to work. So for me, those are the three aspects of inclusive leadership: integrity, trust, really being human in every single interaction we can be.
Yeah, and for most of your career, I know that you've also studied the way we learn as people and individuals and professionals throughout our early years to really develop into the leader that we want to be during adulthood. So I'm fascinated to ask you, what motivates you to study people and human behavior? Why do you get such a thrill out of it?
Well, I think I first realized I wanted to study it because I realized how messed up I was. So the Defy Expectations title comes from a degree of stubborn childishness in myself, where I actually, until I was about 23, I was so deeply riddled with people pleasing and seeking approval that I had no idea who I was. And I started having that realization that I had no idea, and how lost and how alone and how isolated I felt in my mid-20s. And it wasn't until my early 30s that I started to realize how I could break that down. So my passion and my fascination and my complete geekiness about how our brain works, so neurophysiology, neuropharmacology, neuropsychology, through to sociology, to sort of the traditional psychology that we all now study, comes from just a deep understanding to heal the loneliness and sadness that I felt for most of my life. And that has allowed me then to sort of go on and engage and connect with others on a similar level and help them understand themselves more, because awareness and self-awareness allows us to become better humans and therefore connect better with others and therefore lead better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you tell me that you've recently found a need to really dive into how individuals and teams engage with each other, and how they experience the need to grow. And you say that more people need to be cognizant of working together and really valuing other perspectives. So tell me, why you think there's an increased need to do that, and how do we engage with individuals and teams?
Yeah. I was trying to think before this podcast of a single job that exists now that can be done in complete isolation.
There's not many.
There aren't. I could get to artist, and then I thought, well, no, because at some point they've got to show their art. They've got to demonstrate what they've done. You sort of look there and go, monk, nun, no, they've got to go out and serve their community. So the reality is, every role we have, whether that is a professional role or a personal role, requires us to engage with others. Now, for that interaction, that engagement to be fulfilling, to allow us to be happy, to allow us to perform at the level we want it to be, that engagement needs to come from a place of awareness. we all have experienced times when people have ignored us or dismissed us, and we feel a sense of frustration. Quite often it comes out as anger. We feel a sense of, disconnection. The more we can become aware of ourselves and our behavior on others, the more we connect more effectively. Now, if you think back to when I started talking, when I said I couldn't think of many jobs where we are just by ourselves, and you put that thinking in the concept of a team that connects well together, a team that engages and interacts effectively with fulfillment, with comfort, with safety, becomes a high-performing team, becomes a highly productive team, and becomes a highly effective team. So for me, helping people build their awareness, helping people understand how they interact and how their behaviors impact others, allows them to form better, effective, and more productive teams, which drives business success in the end, as well as individual happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen, I know it's important to you to help people, as you said, maximize their business and personal potential and really getting into the nitty-gritty of what makes them tick. So tell me about the passion of helping people maximize their fullest potential and what it means to you.
So my career's been mainly in the corporate world. So I've always loved the thrill of the chase of the big deal. I come from a sales background, the success of a customer, really helping people achieve large objectives. So for me, I have naturally found myself using my skills and talents within the business and the corporate environment to help people maximize their performance. But I've also realized that it can help people become better mothers, become better partners, become better fathers, become, more conscious citizens. So yes, my skill set and expertise has led me to help people fulfill their potential and maximize their capabilities within the workplace. But I think the real driver for me doing this is I know that everybody I change or support change, because actually I never change anybody, it's their awareness that changes of themselves and their understanding of who they are. Every person I do that, I'm helping them to become more aware, become a better human, connect better with individuals. And that's a ripple effect across the world. I feel as though my job is here to serve people. And the skill and the experience and the knowledge I have allows them to do that by being able to become more aware of themselves. And so my job is to help other people feel safe enough to explore themselves. And yes, I do that within the corporate environment, but I think that makes better human beings, full stop.
Yeah, absolutely. And changing mindset is a real big part of also changing psychological safety, in my view. I mean, if you change mindset to be a more positive thinker in the workplace, you'll automatically feel psychologically secure. And I know one of your clients had recently told you that you really help them change their mindset and the way they look at life and safety in the workplace. So tell me, if you had to construct sort of a roadmap for changing mindsets in both work and life, where do you think that would start?
So I said in my last statement that you can't actually really change anybody. They've got to decide to change themselves. And it's the same with mindsets. So the way I always start with people is to start to get them to think about their impact on others. So questions like, how do you think that individual felt after that meeting or after, before that meeting? How do you think you made them feel? Starting them to get a concept of articulating empathy. We talk about empathy a lot. But what does that actually mean? And how do you help somebody feel it and develop it? It's only when we start to understand our impact on others that we will truly either decide to amplify that because we are pleased with what we're doing, or we'll decide to change it because we're horrified by our impact on others. Now, all of us are human and we're never going to be perfect. And I can guarantee you can meet some people, especially my family, who I still annoy them every so often because my behavior isn't perfect. But the more aware we become of our impact on others, the more we become aware of our mindset and the more we have the power to change it. So my process is to always start helping people step back in order to see things from another person's perspective.
It's important to have a diversity of thought to grow as leaders, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I think the diversity push we have at the moment is so critical, because if we don't have the diversity of thinking, how can we drive a deeper empathy across our leaders as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Helen, I'm also curious to ask you about accountability for leaders and really having them self-scout themselves as how effective their leadership style is. So how important do you think accountability is for people in positions of power?
I don't think there is anything more important. Now, whether you call it accountability or responsibility, your impact is on you. You have to own it. Now, we can't be perfect all the time, but as leaders, we have to hold ourselves to our higher standard. And we have to, on those days that we don't perform to the best of our abilities, have the guts to apologize and truly mean it. Accountability is about stepping back on a regular basis and reflecting on the impact that you've had on others. So I talk a lot about the intention impact ratio. All of us have great intentions. Very few people set out to hurt or injure people. But we so little think about our impact. We think our intention is important, but actually it's irrelevant for leaders. A leadership job or a leader's job is to manage their impact, to make sure that their impact is as impactful as possible, and also supports, cares, and loves for those individuals around them. It's no good saying something and then not acting in the same way. So making sure that you are living your values versus rather just talking about them. We've all seen those leaders who can talk wonderfully, and then we know behind the scenes they're atrocious human beings. So accountability for leadership means being able to look yourself every night in the mirror and say, I was as good as I possibly could be today, but I'm going to be better tomorrow. And I'm not going to be better for me. I'm going to be better for the people I'm serving. So accountability is the one thing that all leaders have. And to be quite honest, if you're not willing to hold yourself to account, get out of the way, because that role should be held by someone who is.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen, I know that a big part of your success in working with organizations is making the parallel between sales and organizational excellence. So I'm wondering if you can tell me, in your view, how do you think those two things are interconnected?
So, sales is always critically important and yet massively underplayed in most organizations. Sales allows a business to make the money that it needs to operate. Sounds like a really stupid and basic thing to say, but a lot of the time, sales is considered a dirty word. Ask people if they want to be a salesperson, and they go, no thanks. Well, I've been a salesperson for nearly 25 years, and it's an absolute privilege. The reason is I get to solve people's problems by creating solutions for them. Now, how does that link to organizational excellence? Sales teams regularly spend a lot of time understanding their customer, diving deep into their customers and seeing how many different organizations operate, good, bad, and ugly. Your sales team is a mine of information when it comes to how to operate a business, how to work through systems and solutions, and really how to drive organizational excellence to the fore. However, the sales organization is regularly ignored as a source of information. It's even regularly ignored as a source of customer information. People tend to go to marketing. So for me, really pulling together the sales and the rest of the organization drives excellence across the entire business, because not only do you get a really good understanding of your customer, but you get a great understanding of how numerous different organizations operate at different levels, and you can take that learning back into your organization to make you more effective and more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen, I know that you're talking to me today from Oxford, England, and I know that you live with your two sons, and I know that family is important to you. So tell me, when you're not working, what brings the biggest smile to your face?
So my eldest son has just started playing in a league football or soccer for the Americans out there, a soccer league. And he is in the garden every evening after school practicing. He is determined to be the England goalkeeper when he grows up. And one of my biggest joys is just watching him as he's constantly practicing, the determination on his face. The other thing that I truly love at the moment is, and I'm awful at Minecraft, but my youngest has got into Minecraft. Mm-hmm. And to begin with, I was a really, I'm in my mid-40s, so I was a very traditional mother, kind of going, oh no, he shouldn't be on his tablet, he shouldn't be using technology, he should be drawing and creating using pens and paper and paint. And he came and showed me this castle he had built in Minecraft. It had 27 different rooms, all with different themes. I had my own meditation and yoga room and my own sun terrace in his castle. And he had taken hours, and it was more beautiful than anything he could have put together with pen or paper. And it was some realization that these new worlds that our young kids now got access to are an incredible place to create. And so watching him create and watching that creative process is another thing that just makes my heart sing on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Well, once a mother, always a mother. I tell you,
oh, yeah.
Helen, it's the most important job you'll ever have, right?
Amen to that.
And tell me, Helen, what's the best part about living in England that people wouldn't necessarily associate with living across the pond?
So for me, it's the access to everything across Europe. So I have spent a lot of my life living outside the UK and coming back to the UK, and I've lived in the States, I've lived in Asia. Living in the UK gives you access to everything. Not only is England, Scotland, and Wales beautiful countries in their own right, but in 2.5 hours, I'm in Paris. In 2.5 hours, I'm in Brussels. In 4, I'm in Amsterdam. By train. I don't even have to get on a plane for that. So the access to everything is phenomenal. And that's one of the things I love about England. It's very easy to get from here to a lot of other places to go and explore.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen, in the few minutes I have left for you, I'm curious to ask you any final thoughts you have for any organization or corporation leader who may be watching this about the importance of building resilient leaders, and your final thoughts on how to get that done.
So if you are a leader and you want to build more resilient leaders, the first thing you need to do is truly understand resilience as it relates to you. So what makes you resilient? I know some people, for example, who have to go for a lunchtime walk. I know other people who will only work 9 to 5 because actually they get their resilience, they get their energy, they get their love from outside the work, from their family, from their friends, from their hobbies. Necessarily just your ability to weather the storm. It's your ability to bounce back from it. So helping others see what gives them their energy back, what helps them refine their mojo is really important. And that means allowing people to experiment and also have the space to understand themselves better. So to build resilient leaders, build your self-awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. And Helen, my final question for you today has to do with your own individual and personal legacy and how you want that to be defined.
I want to be known as someone who cared, someone who listened, someone who gave a damn. And through that process, helped someone else just hold their head a little higher, put their shoulders back and realize actually they've got this, they're good enough, and they can go for their own goals and their dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, tell me if people want to get connected with you personally or defy expectations, what's the best way they can do that?
So we're all on LinkedIn. So Helen Honisett or Defy Expectations Limited on LinkedIn, or they can find us at www.defyexpectations.co.uk.
Well, fabulous, Helen. It was a real pleasure starting my day with you. We've got a bit of a time difference, so it was a real pleasure spending the first half of my day with you talking about organizational leadership and structure and building resilient people. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated. And I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's been a real joy.